Hey, how's it going YouTube? I'm Landon and welcome back to another most amazing top 10 video. Okay, so with these videos we've been learning that there are just way too many people who have been convicted for horrible crimes that they didn't even commit. Sometimes it takes decades for the system to realize that they have the wrong person. Sometimes these people are given millions of dollars to try to, compensate a huge mistake, although no amount of money can really justify the amount of years lost in jail that these people had to have served. I mean, it is just insane. And there's people who are just given bus fares and just, hey, I'm very sorry. Well, let's take a look at this crazy list. This is the top 10 longest prison sentences served by innocent people, part 3. If you guys want part 2, click right over here. And also I'll put part 2 in the link in the description below. You guys can click on that as well. So just before we start this video, I just want to let you guys know we have done it. We now have Patreon. We're going to be uploading a whole bunch of extra bonus content for you guys. We're going to be giving away free merch and allowing you guys to help pick our videos. Yes, you can become a part of the team. So if you guys want to help support us, click the link down below. I can't wait to see all you most amazing people over on Patreon. Okay, so enough of that. Starting us off on this list, number 10, we have Clarence Brandley. He was wrongly convicted of murder and rape of Cheryl D. Ferguson back in 1981. So he was sentenced to death 11 months into his sentencing. Cheryl, she was 16 years old at the time she was murdered at Conroe High School in Conroe, Texas. This is the same high school Clarence worked at, and he was a janitor supervisor. Cheryl's body was found in a loft above the school auditorium. This is a place not too many people have access to, so this is when Clarence became the prime suspect. Because who else would be in that location? Well, it took 9 years for his innocence to come to light. Clarence sued the state for $120 million, but he lost. Luckily, they didn't kill this man before the truth came out. Number 9, we have Derek Jameson from Hamilton, Ohio. Back in 1984, a bartender, Gary Mitchell, was beaten to death while several witnesses described the two perpetrators to the police, but no one was immediately arrested. Over a month later, police arrested Derek as the prime suspect. Police noted that he fit the description of one of the perpetrators given to them by witnesses. He wasn't charged at that time. About 4 or 5 months after the crime happened, a guy named Charles Howell was arrested for sexual assault, and he confessed to being an accomplice to the robbery and the murder. Well, at the trial, Charles agreed to testify against Derek in exchange for a lesser sentence, so that's what he did. Except, Charles Howell was lying about everything to try to get a lesser sentence. I mean, this is a dog-eat-dog world. You gotta think only for yourself. So you're gonna do whatever it takes to get out. So it took 20 years to prove that Derek Jameson was actually innocent. At number 8, we have James Joseph Richardson, who served 21 years behind bars for a very horrible crime he didn't commit. James was accused of murdering his 7 kids, so instead of being able to bury his kids, he spent 21 years in the worst place imaginable. James probably had so many questions to why the justice system in which he pays taxes towards is failing him miserably. James was accused of poisoning their kids' lunch. Well, there was phosphate pesticides found inside of the kids' lunches, which has killed them. James is an African American man who was in front of an all-white jury in a time where racism played a huge role. Well, back then during the sentencing, he was sentenced to death, but a few years later with the new Supreme Court law, James was taken off the death penalty. The new law found the death penalty as unconstitutional, so the sentence was reduced to life in prison. Well, after 21 years, he was finally exonerated after many clues have been overlooked or hidden that would have pointed to James's innocence. Number 7, we have Dewey Bozella, who is a former amateur boxer who has now been known for being wrongly locked up for the last 26 years. Back in 1983, Dewey was convicted of the murder of an elderly woman. This guy's lived a really messed up life. When he was 9 years old, he witnessed his father beating his pregnant mother to death, so he ran away and he never turned back. One of his brothers was stabbed to death and another one was shot and killed. This is just insane. Is this real life right now? He has a third brother and he actually died as well. He died of AIDS. So Dewey turned all of his anger into boxing, where he became a world champion boxer. At the age of 20 years old, he was sentenced away to prison for a crime he never committed. I mean, poor guy, he never got a chance of life. After life in prison, he now works with the youth at a local gym. His dream was to have at least one professional fight, so he was training to try to become a world champion boxer. Well, in 2011, his dreams came true. At the age of 52 years old, he fought at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, where he won his professional professional boxing debut. I mean, what a story. He has a very similar story to Reuben Hurricane Carter. He's the guy I talked about in part 1 of this series. He's the guy whose life was turned into a movie played by Denzel Washington. It's a really good movie. Now at number 6, we have Gregory Bright from New Orleans, who was convicted of second-degree murder back in 1974, and he was at the age of 20 years old. Gregory was sentenced to life without parole. He served 27.5 years at the Louisiana State Penitentiary, and that was until he was finally granted a new trial on the grounds that the prosecution had held evidence from the defense in his previous trial. With the new evidence presented, it proved that Gregory was actually the wrong man, and it took almost 3 decades to figure this out. When he was finally released from prison, he was given a $10 check and garbage bags full of legal paperwork. I mean, I'm not really sure what he's gonna do with $10, and what is he gonna do with all his paperwork? It's just all BS, it's just fake stuff that convicted him. Nothing in the paperwork should have showed that Gregory was the man who killed someone. Raymond Teller comes into this list at number 5. At the age of 24 years old, Raymond was falsely convicted of rape, kidnapping, and felonious assault, and this all took place in Cuyahoga County, Ohio. Back in 1981, a 12-year-old boy and an 11-year-old girl was coaxed into a wooded area in a Rocky River reservation, which is in Cleveland, Ohio Park. Well, the 12-year-old was assaulted while the girl was raped. 3 weeks after the attacks, Raymond became the prime suspect after he matched the description. He was sentenced to wait 12 years to life in prison for rape, with additional consecutive sentences of 7 to 25 years and 5 to 25 years as well. This guy just got slammed with many consecutive sentences that all add up to this guy never seeing the light of day. But luckily, 2004, after 27 years behind bars, DNA testing proved that the attacker is actually still on the loose because Raymond's DNA wasn't at the crime scene at all. From someone who falsely served 27 years to now someone who was locked away for 34 years, we have Louis Fogle at number 4. Louis was convicted for a 1982 murder of a 15-year-old girl. The girl was identified as Dean Catherine, who was from Indiana County. It was a tragic day for family, friends, and loved ones, but there was a little bit of peace when Louis was convicted for the crime because the family knew that they had the killer paying for the punishments, for the death of Dean. But with this case reopening up, and with it proven that Louis was actually the wrong person, I'm sure the family are not at rest anymore. There is a killer on the loose, and someone's been locked away for the past 34 years for someone else's crime. Number 3, we have Wiley Bridgeman. He has just left prison after being behind bars for 39 years. For once, he's able to walk around without being in handcuffs or confined to 4 walls or prison rules. He can now make his own rules after 39 years. It's probably going to be so hard to adjust to the real world because with technology alone, that's enough to confuse anybody. So back in 1975, Willie became the prime suspect who murdered a 12-year-old. Willie and his brother Ronnie, in which we'll talk about very soon on this list, were all convicted for this crime, and there was a third person involved as well, and we're going to talk about him at number 2. Willie and his brother became the longest serving wrongfully convicted prisoner, which is for sure something you don't want to be known for. When they were finally exonerated, they were given a $2 million payout, which was calculated out to be $40,330 per year spent in jail. So it was almost like it was a job. It was their job to be in jail, but I'm not sure if it was worth the $40,000 salary that they were given. Not the type of job I would want. Number 2, we have Ricky Jackson, who served 39 years as well, same amount of years, so he can relate to Willie Bridgeman's and his brother's situation. Ricky was the third man who was falsely convicted in the murder of the 12-year-old. So one of the main reasons why these 3 people were convicted of this crime were because of the testimonies made by Eddie Vernon, who has just recanted his testimony after he said he has been pressured and threatened by police to testify. So without any witnesses or any hard evidence linking these 3 men, Ricky Jackson was released. Also, on top of the $2 million given out to these men, they will also receive an undetermined lump sum of money to account for the wages they lost while in prison. I really hope that it's proven that these guys were really well educated or had the ability to make a ton of money. I mean, just lie to them. Tell them you were going to be a doctor. Get paid out. Get your money. Or just say you were almost the CEO of a company, like a major company, and you're owed millions. Or try for billions. I don't know. Trillions? I don't know, that might be reaching a little bit. Okay, so now at number 1, we have the last member of the trio who was wrongly convicted for the murder of the same 12-year-old kid. I mean, who is the real murderer? Well, this time we're talking about Ronnie Bridgeman, who is the younger brother of the previous few numbers we just talked about. So there is actually more to this story that I wanted to bring up. Ronnie Bridgeman's life was in the hands of a 13-year-old boy, Eddie Vernon, who was testifying against him. Yes, this kid was 13 years old. So he testified against him, his brother, and Ricky Jackson. Well, it took 4 decades to figure out that 13-year-old Eddie actually lied about the testimony that ultimately put these 3 guys behind bars. Ronnie was only 17 years old at the time of the murder. Now almost 60 years old, his whole life has just been stripped away from him. He became exonerated of any wrongdoing, and he was also compensated for the time he was in jail falsely. I totally now understand people in jail when they say that they're innocent. Like, you know, everyone's innocent. But you know what, there's so many people out there who actually are. And I mean, this is a part 3 to the series. I just went over 30 people who were in jail for no reason at all, except for a big mistake. Well, there you guys have it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'll see you guys very soon in a new one.